Carrie Miles yelled back at her assistant, "Laurie, meet me at the conference hall at 9 a.m. I'm taking a walk around the city first." It was her first time in Chicago, and everything felt different from Atlanta. The crisp wind off the lake, the roar of the L, the clean geometry of glass and steel catching early sunlight. Carrie tucked her hands into her coat pockets and let the rhythm of the city pull her down Michigan Avenue. She should have been thinking about her presentation. The 5 years it took to grow her consultancy from nothing. The clients she'd won through grit and a stubborn refusal to quit. Instead, the morning had the fragile newness of a page she hadn't decided how to fill. She paused outside a cafe when a burst of chatter and clinking porcelain spilled through the open door. A TV over the espresso machine played the morning. Business segment, muted, captions racing across the bottom. She looked up without thinking. The camera cut to a handsome man in a navy blazer, the anchor's smile turning admiring. Logan Morrison. Her breath snagged. The world didn't stop. The barista still called out orders. Commuters still hurried past. A bus sighed at the curb. But inside her, something slammed to a halt. 5 years unspooled in a single heartbeat. Couch cushions and cap-and-gown photos. A shared calendar with an arrow on move-in day. Text messages that turned from bright blue to suffocating silence. He had promised, soft, certain, "After graduation, I'll be there, we'll figure it out together." And then he wasn't. No call, no reason. One morning became a week. A week became a month. Eventually, she boxed the dishes she'd bought for their kitchen and gave them away. Now he was older, sharper around the jawline, hair a little shorter. That same intent gaze she used to tease him about when he'd get lost in a plan. The caption beneath his name read, "Logan Morrison, Morrison Ventures, Keynote Midwest Innovation Summit, Chicago. Today." Her stomach turned. Carrie forced her eyes away and stepped back onto the sidewalk. Focus. She had clients to meet, a room to command, a case study that would land her second quarter targets in one blow. She whispered the opening line of her speech under her breath like a prayer. "Growth doesn't arrive, it is built." A horn blared. She flinched and laughed at herself, then kept walking. Her phone buzzed. Laurie. "Hey!" Laurie chirped, too cheerful for the hour. "Quick check. You still want your slides in the black template or the white?" "Black," Carrie said. Her voice sounded steady, which felt like a small triumph. "And add the updated metric from Grayson Tech, top right corner." "On it, you okay? You sound winded." "I'm fine, just walking." Carrie hesitated. "The city's loud." "Copy that. See you at 9. Carrie ended the call and stopped at a crosswalk. The hand flashed red. A jogger brushed past, and the faint citrus of his cologne stirred another memory. Logan leaning against her dorm door, laughing, holding out a bag of oranges because he'd read somewhere that vitamin C helped concentration. And she had finals. He'd kissed her then, quick and nervous, like he was still learning her. "Don't," she told herself. "Not now." The light changed. She crossed, the lake wind threading chills through the seams of her coat. A bus shelter wore a poster for the Innovation Summit. Logan Morrison, keynote, 8:30 a.m. Navy blue letters, the same photo from the TV. The time mocked her. He would be speaking across town while she was setting up. The city felt suddenly small, tight, like she could turn any corner and collide with the life she would have had if he had shown up. She ducked into a pocket park and sat on a cold bench. The branches overhead were still bare, but sunlight spilled through them clean and bright. Carrie opened her notes app and typed, "Why I built this, because no one gets to decide if I am chosen." She stared at the sentence. It wasn't part of her presentation. It was the truth she'd learned in her aftermath, when she learned contracts, numbers, and how to steady her voice in rooms where people expected her to shrink. Her phone buzzed. Again, this time a news alert from a local feed. Morrison Ventures expands Midwest Fund. Keynote today in Streeterville. Below it, a thumbnail photo of him stepping out of a black car. "Enough," she whispered and stood. She smoothed her jacket, squared her shoulders, and walked back toward the main avenue. The cafe with the TV came into view again. For a moment, she considered going in, catching the segment with sound, letting the past press its face against the glass one more time. Instead, she kept moving, heels clicking a steady metronome on the concrete. At the corner, a florist was setting buckets of tulips on the sidewalk, corals and whites and a stubborn, hopeful yellow. Carrie bought a small bunch, slid them in two, her tote, and smiled at the ridiculous sweetness of it. She wasn't a girl waiting by a window anymore. She was a woman with a room to lead. By the time the conference hall's steel awning appeared ahead, the wind had lost its bite. Carrie inhaled, exhaled, and let the city's energy rush through her. Not a reminder of what was lost, but a signal of what was hers to claim. She pushed through the revolving door and didn't look back. Despite her nerves, Carrie managed to make it through the day with surprising ease. She reminded herself over and over to stay focused, to breathe, and to remember that this was her moment. When her last meeting ended and a new client shook her hand firmly, she nearly laughed aloud with relief. She hadn't seen him. Great, she told herself. She could return to her hotel with a mind clear of the past. And she did, her portfolio heavier with new contracts, exactly as she had hoped. Back across town, in the solitude of his hotel suite, Logan paced the carpet restlessly. The city lights flickered across the tall windows, but his attention was trapped elsewhere. He had seen her, just for a moment. Her profile lit by the glass lobby of the conference center, her stride purposeful, her hair swept back the way she used to do when she was concentrating. It had taken everything in him not to walk over to her, not to call out her name, not to demand the answers that had tormented him for 5 long years. He sank down onto the edge of the bed, pressing his palms together as if he could hold his thoughts steady. Why hadn't she reached out? Why 5 years of silence? He let the memories come. He had been the awkward one back then, a nerd with thick, worn glasses and a wardrobe that looked like it had been borrowed from another decade. Everyone else laughed at him behind his back, but not her. Carrie had seen him differently. She had challenged him, teased him, but also believed in him. She made him feel like he was more than equations and late-night business models scribbled in notebooks. She brought out the best in him. They had made plans. After graduation, they would move in together. They'd build a future. He could still see her smiling at him in that faded student cafe, her fingers linked through his, as she whispered, "We'll figure it out, Logan, together." But then the day came. The bus station. He had been waiting, suitcase at his side, excitement buzzing in his chest. He kept glancing up, scanning the crowd for her familiar face. Minutes turned into hours, and she never showed. No call, no message, nothing. Confusion gave way to disbelief, then to anger, and finally to an emptiness that swallowed him whole. With no explanation, no goodbye, he boarded the bus back to Boston. He tried to bury himself in his company, to pretend ambition was enough to fill the void. For a week, he convinced himself it was. But then the quiet hours returned, and her absence roared too loud. He needed answers. He needed to know why the woman who had once been his entire world had simply vanished. And now, here she was, in Chicago. After all these years, Logan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he promised himself. He wouldn't let her slip away again. Logan had thought of a dozen ways to approach her, casual, direct, apologetic, even professional, but none of them seemed right. In the end, he chose the one that would guarantee she wouldn't run. Business. He asked Derek, his executive assistant, to arrange a consultation with Carrie's firm. Derek never mentioned Logan's name in the request, just the company and the need for a strategy meeting. Logan knew it was manipulative, but he couldn't risk her refusing to see him, not after what happened, not after 5 years of silence. When Carrie walked into the sleek glass conference room the next morning, she carried herself with the same poise, he remembered, only sharper now, honed by success. But the moment her eyes landed on him, her professional composure cracked, her step faltered, her lips parted, and for an instant her entire face reflected raw disbelief. "Logan," she breathed, her voice low and disbelieving. "Carrie," he said, standing as though the simple courtesy could bridge years of absence. She stiffened, forcing her face into an unreadable mask. "Let's get started." For the next hour, Carrie spoke with precision and expertise. She laid out her firm's strategies, market, trends and recommendations for his company with the kind of confidence that would make any CEO eager to sign on. Logan listened, but his mind barely touched the details. He couldn't stop watching the way her hands moved as she emphasized key points, the way her brow furrowed slightly when she explained numbers, or the faint catch in her breath when It caught him staring. When she finally wrapped up, she placed her tablet on the table and looked him squarely in the eye. "Do you have any questions, Mr. Morrison?" "Yes," Logan said. His voice carried more weight than the word itself. "Why didn't you show up at the bus station? We were supposed to leave together." The air in the room shifted. Her eyes widened. Her entire body went rigid. "What?" she whispered. "I waited," Logan continued, his voice rough, "for hours. You never came." Carrie's face drained of color. "Logan, I was at the dorm. I waited for you, all night. 2 days I barely left. I thought you changed your mind." He pushed back from his chair, the scrape of it echoing like thunder. "That's not true. You know I had broken my phone. After our family goodbye dinner, I asked my brother Harrison to pick you up. He told me you weren't there. The room was empty and everything was gone." Carrie's eyes flared with anger. She stood too, her voice rising. "That's a lie! I was there, Logan. I stayed until I couldn't keep my eyes open. I don't understand why he would do that. Why he would tell you something like that." Logan's thoughts spun. He heard his own voice, quieter, hesitant. Did you tell my mother you were leaving with me?" Her expression hardened, as though she already knew where this was going. "No. What about you?" He shook his head. "No. She wouldn't have approved. And my brother? We didn't talk much. About you. He always said I was too nerdy to hang around with a girl like you. Maybe—" Logan trailed off, the truth dawning like a bitter taste in his mouth. Carrie leaned across the table, her eyes blazing. "Your brother lied to you, Logan. He wanted to keep us apart." The room went still. For the first time in years, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with grief, betrayal, and 1,000 what-ifs. Logan swallowed, his voice barely steady. "If that's true, then we lost 5 years we should never have lost." Carrie's eyes shimmered, though she held her ground. "Yes, Logan, we did." Logan's chest tightened as her words settled between them. 5 years. 5 years of doubt, of bitterness, of nights spent replaying the silence, all rooted in a lie. His hands curled into fists at his sides as guilt surged through him. He should have questioned it back then, should have gone to her instead of taking his brother's. "Word, Carrie." His voice cracked, softer now. "I should have went to you myself. I should have just believed you was gone." Her eyes glistened, the strong professional mask finally slipping. "Yes, you should have. Instead, you left me thinking I wasn't worth the truth." He took a step closer, the distance between them both unbearably wide and dangerously small. "You were worth everything," he said fiercely. "I never stopped thinking about you, not once. But I thought you abandoned me. I thought you chose not to come. And I thought you chose not have me." she whispered, her voice breaking. Do you know what it was like, Logan? Waiting in that dorm room, checking the clock every 5 minutes, convincing myself you'd walk through the door. 2 days, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and then nothing. I thought you'd just stopped loving me. His heart wrenched. Without thinking, he reached across the table and took her hand. She stiffened, but she didn't pull away. Carrie, if I had known. His voice shook with the weight of all the years between them. If I had known my brother lied. Her head snapped up, anger cutting through the pain. Why, Logan? Why would he do that to us? He hesitated. The truth was ugly, but he owed it to her. Because he hated seeing me happy. He always thought I was beneath you. He told me once, half joking, that girls like you didn't end up with guys like me. Maybe he thought he was protecting me from humiliation. Or maybe he just wanted to control me the way he always did. Carrie shook her head in disbelief. You trusted him over me. I was a fool, Logan admitted, his grip tightening on her hand. But Carrie, I swear I didn't stop loving you. I buried my feeling. I built my company, tried to convince myself that was enough. But every time I hit a milestone, I wished you were there to see it. Every time something went wrong, I wished. I could hear your voice telling me to keep going. I never forgot you. Her lips trembled, and for the first time, her anger began to soften into something else, something that scared her more than the fury had. 5 years, Logan, she whispered. We lost 5 years we'll never get back. He stepped around the table, slowly, cautiously, until he was standing inches from her. Then let's not lose another 5, he said. Tell me what I can do to fix this, to make us whole. Again, her breath hitched as tears welled in her eyes. She searched his face, desperate for proof that this wasn't another cruel trick of fate. What she saw was sincerity, raw and unguarded, the same boy she had loved, now grown into a man who carried the scars of choices that weren't entirely his own. I don't know if we can fix it, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I want answers, real answers. We need to know why he did this to us, Logan nodded. Then we'll find out together. For the first time in years, their eyes met, not with resentment, but with the flicker of something long buried, hope. Logan's mind churned as he left Carrie's, her words echoing in his head. The pieces of the puzzle he had carried for years were finally shifting into place, but what remained didn't make sense. Or maybe it made too much sense, and that was the part that burned. He couldn't let it rest. He needed the truth, straight from the source. Logan returned home. He summoned Harrison to his private office. Harrison arrived, looking as casual as ever, tie slightly loose, the easy smirk on his face, the same one that had both charmed and infuriated Logan for most of their lives. You wanted to see me? Harrison asked, leaning against the doorframe. Logan didn't waste time. 5 years ago, the day I was supposed to leave with Carrie, you told me she never showed up. Why? The smirk faltered, replaced with a flicker of unease. Logan, why are we talking about this now? Because I saw her, Logan said, his voice sharp. She told me she was waiting for me. For 2 days, and I believe her. So tell me the truth. Did you lie to me? Harrison looked away, running a hand through his hair. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he muttered, I didn't want to, Logan, but Mom told me to. Logan froze, his breath caught in his throat. What did you say? She told me to, Harrison repeated, louder now, defensive. She knew you were planning to leave with Carrie. She said it would ruin everything. Ruin everything? Logan's voice rose. He stood, fists slamming onto the desk. How could loving her ruin anything? Harrison flinched but pressed on. Mom saw it differently. You were always focused, always driven. She said you were meant to be a CEO one day, and she couldn't let anything or anyone distract you from that path. She didn't think you'd actually fall in love. Not like that. And when you did, she panicked. Logan's stomach twisted. Panic doesn't justify what she did, what you did. Harrison's face darkened. You think I had a choice? You know how Mom is. She told me to tell you Carrie wasn't at the dorm. She said if you left with her, you'd throw away everything you were meant to build. I didn't think you'd believe me so easily. I figured you'd check for yourself. Logan's chest heaved, the weight of betrayal crushing down on him. You told me she abandoned me. You let me hate her for years, let me bury myself in work because of a lie. Do you have any idea what that did to me? To her? Harrison's eyes softened with guilt, but his shoulders sagged in defeat. I didn't think it would last, Logan. I thought you'd forget her like Mom said you would, but you didn't, and I see now that it broke you. Logan turned away, gripping the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles whitened. His mother's voice, stern, cold, unyielding, echoed in his memory. Teresa Morrison, calculating as ever, always saw the world in terms of power and legacy. She never thought her son's heart would have a say in it, but the part that gutted him most wasn't her interference. It was her reasoning. She didn't approve of Carrie, Logan said slowly, realization cutting like a blade. Tell me the truth, Harrison. Is it because Carrie is black? Harrison's silence was answer enough. Logan's entire body went numb, his throat closed, his vision blurred with the force of rage and grief colliding. To know that his mother, his own flesh and blood, had poisoned the most important relationship of his life with her prejudice, her obsession with control, was more than he could bear. Harrison. His voice shook. Get out! Harrison hesitated, shame flickering across his face, but he obeyed. As the door shut behind him, Logan sank into his chair, undone. The truth had surfaced, but instead of relief, it left a wound that went deeper than anything he had imagined. His mother had stolen 5 years from him and Carrie. And now, Logan knew one thing for certain. He would not let her steal another day. Logan sat alone in his office long after Harrison had left, the city lights sprawling beneath him like an endless constellation. For years, he had carried his mother on his shoulders with pride, funding her travels, ensuring she lived in comfort, believing he was giving back to the woman who had raised him. He thought she had been his greatest supporter, the one who pushed him to reach higher. Now the truth soured everything. Teresa hadn't believed in him. Not really. She had used him, molded him into her vision of success, at the cost of the one person who had ever truly seen him, Carrie. Other women had come and gone over the years, drawn to his name, his wealth, his place at the helm of Morrison Ventures. But none of them looked at him the way Carrie once had. None of them had smiled at his nervous rambling, or called his old glasses endearingly stubborn. None of them touched him like he was a man first, not a title. To everyone else, Logan was either a prize to be caught or a spectacle to be mocked. Even in $1,000 suits, he never carried himself with the swagger of the men in his circle. His hair was always unruly, his voice too quiet, his presence more analytical than commanding. He still wore glasses out of habit, and despite the success he had built, he couldn't erase the nerdy boy he once was. Women whispered about it. He heard the laughter when they thought he couldn't, the rumors that he was cold, incapable of intimacy, too awkward to be desired. Logan had suffered every wound of being the outsider, and it all traced back to her, his mother. Teresa had made sure he stayed molded in her rigid frame, focused, disciplined, untouchable, and in doing so she had stripped him of the softness, the vulnerability that Carrie had once loved. He clenched his fists. Pulling up his accounts, he began shifting her funds, line by line, investment by investment. Teresa was across the ocean now, enjoying herself on some Mediterranean coast, smug in the belief that her son would always keep her afloat. Not anymore. The next morning, Logan called Harrison into his office once more. His voice was steady, cold. Don't bother sending our mother any more money. From this moment on, she's cut off. And if I find out you've been secretly helping her, Harrison, you'll be looking for another job." Harrison stiffened, surprise flashing across his face. "But Logan, no!" he snapped. Logan's eyes burned with fury. "She destroyed the only real chance I ever had at love. She stole 5 years of my life. I won't give her another dime." For the first time, Logan felt the shift inside himself, not the driven boy his mother had shaped, but a man reclaiming what was his. His life, his choices, his love, and this time he would fight for Carrie. The next day, Logan stood outside Carrie's office suite, his pulse hammering against his ribs. He had paced the corridor 3 times before finally knocking. When the door opened, Carrie's guarded eyes met his. She didn't invite him in right away. "Logan," she said flatly, "what do you want?" 5 minutes, he pleaded. "Please, I owe you the truth." Something in his voice, hoarse, desperate, softened her stance. She stepped aside, folding her arms as he entered. Logan didn't waste time. "Harrison confessed, he told me, everything that was said that day. It was a lie," he said. Logan hesitated, pain flashing across his face. "Harrison said our mother told him to keep us apart." Carrie's eyes widened, confusion clouding her features. "Your mother?" "My mother never approved of us," Logan said, bitterness cutting through each word. "My mother told Harrison to keep us apart because she knew I was going to be a CEO one day, and in her mind, love was a distraction. But worse," his voice faltered, "she didn't want her son in love with a black woman. My mother thought you would ruin my chances, make me look weak in an industry where appearances meant everything." Carrie staggered back a step, her hand gripping the chair behind her. "So for 5 years, I hated you because of her prejudice." Logan's throat tightened. "Yes, and because I trusted her, because I trusted my brother. I should have trusted you instead. Carrie were the only one who ever saw me, not the suits, not the title, not the awkward kid with bad glasses, just me." Tears welled in Carrie's eyes, but she blinked them back, her jaw set. "And you've been supporting her all this time?" "Yes, but I cut her off today. No more financial support," Logan said firmly. "She'll never control me again. I should have done it years ago. I can't change the time we lost, Carrie, but I can promise you this. I won't let anyone take you from me again. Not her. Not anyone." The silence was heavy. Finally, Carrie whispered, "Logan, do you know what you're asking? You want me to open my heart to you again, when the wound hasn't even healed." "I know," he admitted, voice raw. "But I'm asking anyway, because you're the only woman who ever looked at me and didn't just see dollar signs. You're the only one I've ever loved." Carrie closed her eyes, her body trembling with the war between her hurt and her hope. "I need time," Logan nodded slowly. "Then I'll give you all the time you need." But time wasn't on their side. 2 weeks later, Teresa Morrison returned from her trip abroad, her heels clicking across the marble of Logan's estate as if she still owned the ground she walked on. Logan was waiting for her in the study. Harrison, lingering uneasily in the background. "Darling," Teresa greeted, sweeping off her gloves, "I heard you've been dramatic." "Dramatic?" Logan's voice was sharp. "You destroyed the best part of my life, Mother. And you call that dramatic?" Her lips curved in a thin smile. "I saved you. That girl, Carrie, she would have been an anchor around your neck. Do you think investors would have taken you seriously if you'd run off with her? You were meant to lead." "No," Logan snapped. "I was meant to choose my own life. But you decided for me. You used Harrison, you lied, and you cost me 5 years of happiness." Teresa's eyes narrowed, a flash of ice beneath her polished exterior. "You think love matters in this world. You've built an empire, Logan. You're respected, envied. That girl would never have given you this." "She gave me more than this," Logan fired back. "She gave me a reason. She gave me a place where I wasn't a freak in glasses or the quiet kid no one wanted. She loved me, something you never really did." The words landed like a blow. Teresa's face stiffened. "You're ungrateful. Everything you are, you owe to me." "No!" Logan said, his voice steel. "Everything I am, I built in spite of you. You taught me ambition, but Carrie taught me humanity. Without her, I'm nothing but a shell." Harrison stepped forward, guilt heavy in his eyes. "He's right, Mom. You didn't just push him, you broke him, and I helped." Teresa looked between her sons, her control slipping for the first time. "You'll regret this," she hissed, before sweeping from the room. Logan's hands shook, but he didn't falter. He had finally cut the last string binding him to her control. For the first time in years, he felt free. Now all that remained was to prove to Carrie that this freedom meant something, that she, not his mother's legacy, was the life he wanted. After a week of space and time, Logan stood outside Carrie's office building with his heart thudding like a drum. He'd practiced the words 100 times in his head, but when she stepped through the doors, in her tailored coat, hair pulled back neatly, all of his rehearsals vanished. "Carrie," he called softly. She slowed, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Logan, what are you doing here?" He shoved his hands into his pockets, nerves plain despite the expensive suit he wore. "I wanted to ask you something." She tilted her head, guarded. "What is it?" "A date," he said simply. His voice cracked, but he didn't care. "I want to take you out. Not as a client, not as someone I wronged, but as the man who still loves you. I want a chance to start again." Her lips parted, in surprise, then pressed into a thin line. "Logan, after everything, after 5 years," she shook her head. "You hurt me more than anyone ever has, and part of me thinks I'd be a fool to let you back in." "I know," he admitted, stepping closer, "but the truth is I never stopped loving you. I thought I had lost you, Carrie. I thought you had walked away, and I buried myself in work because it was easier than facing the pain. But now I know it wasn't you. It was lies. It was manipulation. And I won't let those lies win anymore." Silence stretched between them, filled with the faint hum of traffic and the glow of city lights. Carrie studied his face, the nervous twitch in his jaw, the sincerity in his eyes behind those stubborn glasses. Against her will, her heart squeezed. She wanted to resist, to remind him of the years of loneliness she endured. But love has a way of ignoring logic. Finally, she sighed. "One date, that's all I'm promising." Relief flooded his face, a smile breaking through the tension. "One date is all I need." That night, he took her to a quiet restaurant tucked away on a side street. Nothing flashy, just warm lights, soft music, and the kind of place where conversation came easily. And to Carrie's surprise, it did. They fell back into the same rhythm they had always had. He teased her about her stubborn drive. She laughed at his awkward attempts at small talk. He listened like she was the only person in the world. And when she caught him staring, she realized she didn't mind. It felt like no time had passed at all. After dinner, they walked along the riverwalk, the water shimmering under the lights of the city. Carrie stopped, leaning on the railing, the cool breeze tugging at her coat. Logan stood beside her, his hand brushing hers. She glanced at him, and he looked back with that same earnest gaze that had once made her fall in love. "Carrie," he murmured, "I don't want to waste another day. Not one more." Before she could answer, he leaned in, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was both familiar and new. It was tender, filled with all the years they had lost and the promise of the ones ahead. When they finally pulled apart, Carrie's eyes glistened. "Logan," she whispered, her voice shaking, "I still love you." His chest tightened, a mixture of joy and regret crashing together. He rested his forehead against hers. "And I love you. Nothing and no one is going to come between us again." And in that moment, under the glow of the city lights, they both knew it was true. For a few weeks, Carrie and Logan floated in their own quiet world. Their days were filled with work and late-night phone calls, their evenings stolen for dinners, walks, and rediscovering the rhythm that had once bound them together so naturally. Logan felt lighter than he had in years, laughing freely, smiling without effort, allowing himself to enjoy the simple fact that Carrie was back in his life. But the world around them wasn't quiet for long. The first whispers began in boardrooms and charity galas. Logan Morrison, the reserved CEO who had spent years avoiding scandals, was now openly seen with Carrie. To him, it felt like breathing again. To others, it was fuel. "Did you hear? He's seeing her. She's not from our circle. She'll ruin his image. I always said he was strange, but this is reckless." Soon, the whispers found their way into articles. A glossy business magazine featured a photo of them leaving dinner together. Carrie's hand looped through his arm, her laugh frozen in time while Logan looked at her with unmistakable tenderness. The headline read, "Love at a Cost. Morrison's new flame raises questions." Logan had expected resistance, but he hadn't expected the sharp sting of cruelty. Reporters painted Carrie as ambitious, suggesting she was leveraging his name for influence. Socialites whispered that she didn't belong, that she wasn't polished enough for their circles. Some didn't bother to whisper at all, and beneath it all was the uglier undercurrent, the part no one said aloud in polite company, but that Logan knew was there. The prejudice his mother had once wielded was still alive in their world. Some of his peers, still bound by old money and old thinking, could not fathom why a man of Logan's stature would openly love a black woman. The backlash hit Carrie hardest. Clients she'd been courting suddenly pulled back, emails went unanswered, calls rescheduled indefinitely. She could feel the shift in the way people looked at her in professional spaces, curiosity tinged with judgment. One night, as Logan walked her back to her hotel, she broke the silence. "It's happening again, isn't it?" He frowned. "What? Do you mean they're trying to erase me, just like your mother did? Only now it's not just her, it's the entire world you live in." Her voice trembled, despite the strength in her posture. "I worked so hard to build my business, Logan. I can't let this destroy me." Logan stopped walking, his hand tightening around hers. "Carrie, look at me." She did, her eyes glassy but fierce. "I won't let them take this from us. I won't let them take you from me. If the price of being in their world is losing you, then they can have it. I'd rather burn down the image than let them dictate my life." Her chest rose sharply, as though his words startled her. "Do you know what you're saying?" "Yes," he said, certainty anchoring every syllable. "I'm done living by their rules. I'll make it public. I'll tell them myself." The next day, Logan did what few CEOs in his position ever dared. At the close of a quarterly press conference, after discussing profits and projections, he paused. Cameras still rolling, pens still scratching, he set his notes aside. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice calm but steady. "For years, people have speculated about my personal life. I've kept it private because I believed my work should speak louder than anything else. But privacy has allowed lies and prejudices to thrive. So let me be clear, I am in love. Her name is Carrie Miles, and she is the best part of my life. No one's opinion will change that. Not my peers, not the media, not anyone." The room erupted in questions, but Logan didn't answer. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and left the stage. Carrie, watching the live broadcast from her office, covered her mouth with trembling hands. For the first time since their reunion, she realized just how far he was willing to go, not only to win her back, but to protect her. And while the backlash wasn't over, the balance of power had shifted. Logan was no longer hiding. He was fighting for her, for them. The fallout came quickly. Within hours of Logan's press conference, headlines exploded across every news outlet. Morrison Ventures CEO declares love in public statement. Romance or recklessness? Investors react to Logan Morrison's admission. Who is Carrie Miles, the woman behind the billionaire? Stock tickers fluttered. Analysts debated whether his emotional move would destabilize investor confidence, and society columns dissected every photo they could find of Carrie, her clothes, her posture, even the way she smiled. For Carrie, the attention was suffocating. At her office the next morning, her team sat stiffly around the table, avoiding her eyes. A client she had been courting for weeks abruptly cancelled their contract, citing timing concerns. Two others sent polite but final emails, stepping back with vague excuses. The pressure was real, and Carrie could feel the weight of being scrutinized not as a consultant but as the woman on Logan Morrison's arm. But there were glimmers of something else too. A small business owner she had advised months ago sent flowers with a card that read, "Don't let them dim you. You're stronger than their world." One of her younger associates, eyes shining, whispered, "We're with you, Carrie. Don't let them scare you." The backlash was real, but so was the quiet support. Meanwhile, across the city, Teresa Morrison slammed the newspaper onto her marble countertop, her face pale with fury. "He's lost his mind," she hissed, pacing her penthouse. "After everything I built, everything I planned, he throws it away for her?" Her phone rang. Harrison's name lit the screen. She answered sharply. "Did you see what your brother did?" "Yes, Mother," Harrison said wearily. "The whole world saw?" "You have to talk sense into him," Teresa demanded. "He's humiliating himself, and me." Harrison's silence stretched. Finally he said, "He doesn't care about being humiliating. He cares about her." Teresa froze, shock cutting deeper than anger. "You're siding with him?" "I'm siding with the truth," Harrison said, his voice firming. "We lied. To him, Mother. We lied to her. And for what? Because you couldn't stand the thought of him loving someone outside your perfect little mold. You've controlled him his whole life, and he's finally breaking free. Maybe you should let him." Teresa's lips pressed into a thin line. "He'll regret this. They always do. Love fades, but legacy is permanent." "Maybe," Harrison replied softly, "but legacy won't keep him warm at night. Love will." Teresa ended the call, her hands trembling. She wasn't used to losing control, not of her sons, not of the narrative. And yet, for the first time, she realized Logan wasn't coming back to her way of thinking. That evening, Logan arrived at Carrie's office, slipping past the paparazzi who had staked out the building. Carrie met him in the lobby, arms crossed, her expression a mixture of frustration and awe. "You just couldn't help yourself, could you?" she said, voice low. He braced himself. "Carrie, I couldn't let them keep whispering. I needed the world to know the truth, that you're not some scandal, you're the woman I love. I'd rather lose investors than lose you." Her eyes softened despite herself. "Do you know what this is costing me, Logan? I lost 2 clients today, and the ones who stayed, half of them look at me like I'm only here because of you." Logan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then we'll rebuild together. If it means creating a new path, we'll do it. I'll use my influence to open doors, but you'll walk through them on your own. I don't want to overshadow you. I want to stand beside you." Carrie's throat tightened. She had wanted to be angry, to remind him how complicated this all was. But as she looked at him, nervous, earnest, his hair a little unruly as always, she remembered the boy who once sat with her in a library corner, glasses slipping down his nose, telling her she made him believe he could be more. Her voice softened. "You really mean it?" "Every word," he said. For the first time, Carrie allowed herself a small smile. "Then I guess we're in this together." Logan took her hand, and though the world outside was ready to tear them apart, inside that, moment there was only certainty. Teresa Morrison had never been the type to wait for things to fix themselves. When her power was threatened, she confronted it head-on. So, one crisp afternoon, she appeared unannounced in Carrie's office. The receptionist froze, uncertain, but Teresa's presence was commanding. Tailored suit, pearls gleaming, and the air of someone used to getting past locked doors. Carrie looked up from her desk, her jaw tightening when she saw her. "Mrs. Morrison," Carrie said evenly, standing. "This is a surprise." Teresa's eyes swept the room with quiet disdain before settling on Carrie. "Let's not pretend, Ms. Miles. You know why I'm here." Carrie folded her arms. "I can guess, but go ahead, say it." Teresa's smile was thin, brittle. "Logan is blinded by nostalgia. You were his college sweetheart, and now he's confusing old feelings with something lasting. I won't watch my son destroy everything he's worked for because of you." Carrie's eyes flashed, but her voice stayed calm. "Destroy? Or free himself from the cage you built for him?" Teresa stiffened. "You don't understand the world we live in. Appearances matter. Investors, boards, reputations. A woman like you..." She hesitated, her tone sharp with unspoken prejudice. "Does not belong at his side, not in this circle. You will only drag him down." For a long moment, Carrie simply studied her. Then quietly she said, "The difference between you and me, Mrs. Morrison, is that I don't need Logan's money or status to define me. I built my business from nothing, without a famous name or family legacy to open doors. I've earned every client, every deal, every step forward. I belong wherever I decide I do." Teresa's lips pressed together. "You're stubborn. That will only make the fall harder." Carrie stepped closer, her voice steady. "The only person who will fall is you when the world realizes your son doesn't need your approval anymore. He loves me, and no scheme or prejudice of yours will change that. You already stole 5 years from us. You won't steal another day." For the first time, Teresa faltered. Her composure cracked, if only slightly. Without another word, she turned on her heel and left, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Carrie sank into her chair, her chest tight, but she felt something she hadn't in years. Power. She had stood her ground, and she hadn't wavered. A week later, Carrie received an unexpected invitation. A multinational tech firm, one that had previously declined her services, requested a meeting. Skeptical, she prepared herself, polishing her presentation late into the night. When she entered their Chicago boardroom, she noticed the sidelong glances, the faint smirks. The headlines about her and Logan were still fresh. She knew what they were thinking. She's only here because of him. But when she began to speak, the room changed. Carrie's voice carried authority, confidence, and precision. She dissected their market struggles, outlined practical solutions, and delivered insights no other consultant had offered. She spoke without a single mention of Logan, Morrison Ventures, or their relationship. For an hour, she commanded the space, her brilliance undeniable. When she finished, the room was silent, not with doubt, but with respect. Finally, the CEO leaned forward. "Ms. Miles, that was extraordinary. We'd be foolish not to work with you." Carrie's heart leapt, but she smiled professionally. "I'll have a contract drafted by the end of the week." Walking out of that building, sunlight spilling over the pavement, Carrie felt lighter than she had in years. Not because of Logan, not because of Teresa's defeat, but because she had proven, both to the world and to herself, that she was more than the woman on a billionaire's arm. She was Carrie Miles, and she had earned her place. That evening, she found Logan waiting outside her office, his coat collar turned up against the wind. She ran to him, laughter bubbling out despite the chaos of the past weeks. "You're smiling," he said, relief softening his features. "That's a good sign." Carrie threw her arms around him, the weight of the day lifting in his embrace. I won them, Logan. On my own. They signed with me. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, pride shining there. I never doubted you, and I never needed you to fight my battles, she whispered, but I'm glad you're beside me. He kissed her then, fierce and certain, sealing what both of them now knew in their bones. No mother, no boardroom, no whispering crowd could come between them again. Together they weren't just surviving the backlash, they were rewriting the story, on their own terms. Logan had always been deliberate in his choices, but this was the easiest decision he'd ever made. He had quietly arranged to establish a satellite office in Atlanta, ensuring he could be near Carrie without asking her to uproot the life she had worked so hard to build. When he told her, she blinked in surprise before a slow smile spread across her face. "You're serious," she whispered. "Completely," he said, taking her hand. "I want to be where you are. I don't want to fly in and out of your life anymore. I want to come home to you." Together, they found a charming townhouse nestled on a tree-lined street in Midtown, its wide windows spilling with light, its rooms filled with possibility. As they walked through, Carrie laughed softly, imagining where she'd place her favorite chair, where her books would live, where their lives would intertwine. On the last walk through, when it was just the two of them, Logan paused in the empty living room. Carrie turned, expecting another comment about the high ceilings, but instead he reached into his pocket. His glasses slipped slightly down his nose as he dropped to one knee, his voice trembling but strong. "Carrie," he said, gazing up at her with all the love and certainty he carried, "I don't just want to move in with you. I don't just want to share a house. I want a life. Will you be my wife? Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision as her hands flew to her mouth. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then, heart racing, she whispered, "Yes, Logan, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, rose and kissed her, and in that empty house full of promise, they knew they had finally come home. Carrie and Logan chose simplicity over spectacle. When the time came, they stood together in her local church, sunlight pouring through the stained glass windows, their hands joined as they spoke, vows meant only for each other. There were no flashing cameras, no high society crowd, just a handful of people who mattered most. Carrie's closest friends, Logan's brother Harrison, and a few trusted colleagues filled the pews. The ceremony was quiet, intimate and deeply sincere. When Logan slipped the ring on her finger, Carrie felt a peace she had never known, as though the years of pain had finally been washed away in that single moment. They agreed not to rush into the chaos of married life without making time for themselves. After careful planning over 2 months, Carrie hired additional staff for her firm, ensuring her clients would be well cared for during her absence. Logan delegated more responsibilities to his executive team, setting boundaries he had never dared to before. For the first time, he put his personal life first. Then, they disappeared into a month-long honeymoon that carried them across the world. They strolled hand in hand along the Seine in Paris, laughed over street food in Bangkok, marveled at the beauty of the Amalfi Coast, and stood in awe beneath the ancient ruins of Greece. In every city, in every moment, they rediscovered not only the joy of love, but also the freedom of being unapologetically together. By the time they returned home, tanned, smiling, and more in sync than ever, they weren't just husband and wife, they were partners, ready to face whatever the world threw their way, side by side. 1 year later, their home was filled with the quiet hum of anticipation. Carrie's hand often rested on her growing belly, and Logan found himself staring at her with wonder every time she did. They were expecting a baby, a new chapter neither of them had dared to imagine during the years they'd spent apart. Logan, once the awkward man who faded into the background of boardrooms, had changed in ways even he couldn't fully recognize. Confidence radiated from him now, born not from titles or wealth, but from love and belonging. His suits, once ill-fitting and stiff, now draped perfectly across his frame, tailored to match the man he had become. His hair, once unruly, was now styled with a sharp elegance that highlighted the strength of his jaw. And his glasses, those thick frames that had always marked him as the nerd, were gone, replaced by a clear gaze that met the world head-on. In public, women now noticed him, turned their heads when he walked by, whispered when he entered a room. But Logan never spared them more than polite acknowledgement. His eyes always sought Carrie, the love of his life, the woman who had once been stolen from him but now stood by his side, carrying their future within her. At night, he would rest his hand gently against her stomach, feeling the flutter of the life they had created. "Our baby," he would murmur, his voice filled with awe. "Our second chance." Carrie would smile, leaning into him, knowing that the man she loved had not only transformed on the outside, but had finally shed the chains of doubt and control that had once bound him. He was hers, wholly, proudly, and forever. The end. Hope. You enjoyed this love story by Green Tea Tales. Support our channel with comments, likes, and subscribe. Thank you.